up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. It's the aftermath. Joined as always by Phil Perry. And Phil, we are in the aftermath of a Patriots loss to the Buffalo Bills that kneecaps in many ways their chances for winning the AFC East. Quick and brief 27-second response from you to that development.
This is what happens when you go up against a great quarterback who has a great day and you play poorly. You needed all three of those things yesterday for that game to turn out the way it did.
Kyle Van Noy addressed some of this after the game. Here's Kyle Van Noy, and then we're going to get into my slant.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing to lose, right? Especially when the standard's really high and you have high expectations for yourself and for your teammates. So it's disappointing when you lose, but we can't point the finger. We got to get together as a team. We got to come closer, and we just got to do the right things. We just got to practice a little bit better. I'm not saying practice was bad. Just got to watch a little extra film here and there and tweak some things and just play better. I could sit up here and talk all day about yada, 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 but at the end of the day, we just got to go produce and, talk less and play more.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Phil, my slant is this. Are the Patriots coming undone? Has Mac Jones hit the rookie wall? Did we generally overrate them during their 7-game winning streak? Were they frauds? Or did their expiration date just come and they are water seeking its own level? The interesting thing is the loss to the Colts, you and I agreed, was all about what the Patriots did to themselves. And this loss to the Bills, as you referred to it, it's losing to a superstar player who was at the height of his powers. But the Bills also came out and played with an intensity and urgency that the Patriots didn't match. So that's the second game in a row that's happened. And when you have a team that you don't show up to play against with the proper urgency in the Colts, and then you have a team that you know is going to come out loaded for bear like the Bills and is already probably more talented than you, and you don't show up, that's a bad combination. But to me, the focus is the most troubling aspect of this. And when we look at the examples of focus lapses in the Colts game, they're legion. But then when we also look at the number of lapses against the Bills and the occasions where you say, hey, they were just outclassed, those are also legion. The Bills had 7 possessions, Phil. Legitimate possessions. They ran out the clock before the half and at the end of the game. All 7 drives were 7 plays or more. They had a 10-play drive, a 13-play drive, another 13-play drive, a 14-play drive. The one time they failed to score, that's because the one time they turned it over on downs and failed to score on a drive, Bills were down at the 1-yard line and had a dropped touchdown pass. So they never stopped them, which is an announcement that they are a better team than the Patriots, no matter how you slice it. On a day when there's no weather, Phil, on a level playing field, the Buffalo Bills are better than the Patriots, and they can't afford to make mistakes, which is kind of what we were driving at, wasn't it? When we were saying they were the most consistent, trustworthy, loyal team. We were never saying they're the best. We were just saying they were the most consistent. Phil, take it away. Your reaction, then your slant.
Well, I would say this. They were the more talented team for sure. And they have the greater margin for error because of the guy that's playing quarterback for them. So they made mistakes too. They didn't play the perfect game, but Josh Allen can get you out of those moments because he is who he is. For the Patriots, you have to play cleanly. And I think that's the point you're getting at when you're talking about them being trustworthy. When they don't play like a trustworthy team, they'll lose to a good team more often than not. And so while I would say, yes, of course, the Bills are better than them on Sunday. And yes, they are more talented than the Patriots are, clearly at the quarterback position. They're not so good that the Patriots should play a game like the one they played on Sunday. For the focus to be where it was, that's a baseline thing. That is a foundation level thing that should be there week after week after week. Focus, discipline. That's something that we talk about every year with the Patriots, that they are on a different tier than most. And for them to not show up in those regards. And to not show up early in that game when you found out the week before what happens when you play a good team and you don't show up early, that's embarrassing. And so, yes, the Bills were better Sunday. Yes, the Bills are more talented. The Patriots can beat the Bills. They can't, though, beat the Bills when they shoot themselves in the foot as often as they did. For instance, Tom, I thought their plan against Josh Allen initially was the right one.
Agreed.
I think it's the right thing to do, to sag off, try to keep him in the pocket. So don't go crazy with your rush lanes, trying to get up the field, make him check it down, rally to the football and tackle. The part that the Patriots left out yesterday, though, was rally to the football and tackle. Passes that should have gone for 4 or 5 yards end up going for 11 or 12, the first pass of the game. Check down to the flat to Devin Singletary. That's a win. You've been working on that all week leading up to this game. That's what you're trying to do to Josh Allen again and again and again. You won, and then you didn't because you couldn't tackle him, because Kyle Duggar went for a ride for about 7 yards, and then when Dante Hightower came over to try to finish off the play, he bounced off like he was wearing an inflatable plastic bubble. Like, you can't play that way against this team when you have the plan that you have, and then you don't execute it at the end to make it look good. You end up having a game like you did yesterday. So I think the Patriots can play with them. I'm trying to be consistent. I think they are still a good team, but when you don't do the baseline things like focus and discipline that they need to do to win, you're not going to have a shot against a team like this.
Look at the critical exchange in the game, in my estimation. That is the one that bridges early on when it's 7-7. And I don't want to screw it up, but you ended up having an incompletion drop to Harry, followed by a pick, followed by a drive that the Patriots had bowed up on. Is it correct? Check down to Singletary. You were going to keep them out of field goal range because Kyle Van Noy made a terrific play and it kept it to 4th and 7. I might have the timing screwed up, but the bottom line is going to be on this point that when you did stop them, you had a discipline gaffe, and Christian Barmore jumps off sides, encroaches. It's now 4th and 2, and you give up a 23-yard gain. Phil, did I get the chronology screwed?
So that was 2 drives after the pick. So after the pick, was the drive where the Bills were stopped on downs.
And then the next one, they had a chance to stop them again on downs, and it's 4th and 7.
Correct.
So the defense. So those are the threadbare areas. But it took a Bills drop in the end zone, not a Patriots play, a Bills drop to circumvent the first drive, and then a Patriots mistake to extend the next drive. And that's the discipline stuff we're talking about. When you have an all-pro punter like Jake Bailey, and he kicks a line drive punt after you're backed up, I mean, he's had a less than year. So we've looked at all these different mistakes they're making, and it's simple focus mistakes. So
can I just ask you, Tom, because you were all over this at the time when this happened 2 years ago, in 2019, and we've talked about it this year on this podcast and elsewhere. Are you getting some 2019 vibes from this Patriots defense? Because when you look at that game yesterday, that's a good offense. It's a great quarterback. They're missing 2 of their better receivers. Their entire offensive line was a mess, to put it simply, yesterday. They had Spencer Brown, who's a rookie 3rd-round pick, starting at right tackle. They did get their left tackle back, Deion Dawkins, but he did not practice all week long. He was dealing with COVID. The first time that guy dealt with COVID, unfortunately, he had been hospitalized. So clearly he was good enough to come out and play, but he came out and he dominated. I mean, he had Matt Judon on his back on multiple occasions. They lost a starting guard in this game, Ike Budiger, to a ruptured Achilles. John Feliciano.
So you're asking, are they a fake defense?
I'm asking what's going on with the defense here, because we thought this was a good defense, and that should have been a 40-point performance by the Bills with a mess of an offensive line and down 2 offensive starters yesterday. They're not that bad, are they?
Phil, here's the thing. That Buffalo team, that 2019 season started to go sideways when they got shredded by Deshaun Watson, who, in case you've all forgotten, is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. Then Patrick Mahomes beat the Patriots 23-16. Competitive game for the Patriots defense. They won a couple against the Bengals. They beat the Bills.
The Ravens got them good that year too.
But Ryan Fitzpatrick, yeah. But you're right. So this is, once you get in with somebody who can throw a little bit as a boxer or as a quarterback, things are going to look different. They're going to stress you differently. But I think that Patriots defense ate up and chewed up and beat up on lesser offenses than this one did. I mean, that team was on an historic level. This one played pretty good against Brady and, didn't play very good against Prescott, but I don't know.
Justin Herbert. No, they held their own against Justin Herbert. I mean,
you're
they
right,
did see
but
some real quarterbacks.
Yeah. If you want
this
to,
wasn't Luke Falk and Sam Darnold.
It looks like the 2019 team. It does. I think it's a better defense now than it was then for all that they accomplished and all the personnel that was out there. I think that this one I would trust further because of the youth on it. But you could have that debate and I could be proven wrong on that. The bottom line is, though, everything has to go right. And at this juncture, things are starting to go wrong, which transitions now to the question that I want to pose is Mac Jones starting to hit a rookie wall, or was he held hostage in part by the lack of Kendrick Bourne all week long, and then on the field, he wasn't really used as much, by the fact N'Keal Harry was a centerpiece. Hunter Henry seemingly couldn't get open. Nelson Aguilar wasn't out there. You do get what I'm driving at. Was this Mac? I'm starting to feel like it is. Starting to feel like some of the past year is catching up with him and starting to weigh heavy on the guy.
I think this was his worst game. I do think a lot of this was on Mac Jones. Hunter Henry was not open at times, but then there were times when he was open. And I'm remembering one play in particular. I think it was the second quarter where he tried to hit him about 15, 18 yards down the left sideline while Henry's coming from the middle of the field. And Henry almost didn't even sell out to try to make the catch because the throw was so far off the mark that he wasn't sure it was for him.
Mm-hmm. Right. I couldn't tell either. I wasn't sure who he was going to.
There were miscommunication plays with Hunter Henry and Mac Jones. There were miscommunications, I thought, with Brandon Bolden on simple little check down passes. And Mac Jones, he had this is a next gen stat, but he was negative 19% in terms of his completion percentage over expected. So that's a stat where he's been in the top 10 all year long. I've been referencing it all year long because I think it's a good, legitimate accuracy stat. And that was his most inaccurate day. I don't know if it's a rookie wall, Tom. I don't know if it's the cold. That's really the first time we've seen him try to throw in the cold. Obviously, the Patriots took the ball out of his hands to a large extent in Buffalo a few weeks ago. And so is it exhaustion mentally, physically? Is he dealing with something, some kind of injury? I think when you have a really good defense, which this Bills defense is a really good defense. They got run over in Buffalo a few weeks ago, but they have a smart secondary. They have two really good safeties, and they have a good defensive head coach. This is a team that's given Tom Brady problems in the past. There's something about the way they deploy those guys. I think it's in particular those two safeties that give this team a lot of trouble. And so it gave Mac Jones trouble, Tom, but this is all a very roundabout way of saying they still scored 21 points against a good defense. To me, this is, while it was not a good game for Mac Jones, this is all about the defense to me, because I remember asking Daniel Jeremiah a few weeks ago, can they win at a really high level? Are we even talking about this team maybe playing into February the way it's built right now? And he said, well, if your defense continues to play out of its mind, then yes.
Yeah. And that's what made the Patriots who they were. Why was Mac Jones, when we talked about Mac Jones and how far he could go, was how often would the defense return the ball to him? I remember talking about that, just can Mac Jones win a Super Bowl? I think it was on BST. And I said, yeah, because he's got a defense that's going to give him the ball back the same way the 2001 Patriots gave the ball back to Tom Brady repeatedly. But, when I look at the mistakes that Mac Jones has made, whether it's accuracy, whether it's reads, whether it's throwing a little bit late, whether it's just a simple physical thing as in terms of arm strength, or taking a delay of game on the first drive last week, I just think that as often as we've talked about the resilience that he's shown, I wonder if the bucket is dry. I wonder if the bucket is dry. I want to just really, because I typed them all out and I have them here, just blast through some of the discipline stuff that we've talked about. Brandon King offsides last week on a field goal. Mac Jones, the delay on the first drive. Isaiah Wynn, a sack on the first drive. The third block punt of the season. Shaq Mason downfield on the Patriots' second drive. This is last week. Johnny Smith, a false start. Mike Onwenu, a false start. N'Keal Harry, now we're into this week. N'Keal Harry with a drop Mac Jones with a pick. J.C. Jackson, really 1.5 drop picks. Jake Bailey can't punt. I don't even want to get into the tackling in the 4th and 1. We'll discuss that after. But these are the plays that the Patriots were making or not making and having drives extended, or the other team was making. And I want to get into, there's a lot of conversation about the officiating after this game. And there was a ton of consternation about 2 different calls. First, on the hit on the sideline with Mac Jones, my first inclination was, Jerry Hughes kind of grabbed him just as he was getting to the line. He's entitled to be able to make contact. He was clearly trying to hold him up. I could see why they might pick it up. And then they had the conversation. They did pick it up. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more. It's kind of black and white. He could have not touched it. He could have kept his hands to himself. He knew he was going out of bounds. So that, coupled with the fact that the kid almost did, a backwards scorpion, means you got to throw the flag. Even if Jerry Hughes had successfully held him up and embraced him and patted him on the ass, you got to stay consistent. And that's why, if I'm going to stay consistent with that flag should have stayed, Trent Brown has to be smarter. If you're jumping up and down and the official is asking you to stop and you keep doing it because taunting is a thing this year, well, then you're a highly paid player and trusted player who screwed up. When there's a 15-yard late hit and you've seen the flag fly down the field on your quarterback, what's David Andrews going to do? It's not like Milano was standing over Mac Jones with a crowbar. I mean, he wasn't going to smash him again. It was over with. So he's going to run 15 yards downfield to do what? It's all window dressing. That play by David Andrews might have been as close to the dumbest play. And I know they scored on the drive. That might have been one of the dumbest plays of the last 2 weeks. He ran 15 yards downfield in a season when anybody looking cross-eyed at an opponent is getting a flag. And he's not going to do anything. He's not about to get punched. He didn't even go there and do the classic, put your hand in the guy's chest and look down at your teammate and help him up to give yourself plausible deniability. He immediately started belly bucking. So what else are you going to do if you're the official in that instance? It was absurd to me because it's a player who should have known better, like Trent Brown, like Brandon King, like Shaq Mason, like Johnny Smith. Phil, help me.
I can't.
Am I over the top? I mean, we've heard a lot of, David Andrews has to be able to protect his quarterback. Come on.
I find that patently ridiculous.
Charles Davis makes it harder for us. I don't know if you could hear the broadcast in the press box. I was in the studio. Charles Davis made it harder because he goes, usually the officials will let a player do that. So that's what I was seeing quite a bit on Twitter is they never throw that. You rarely see a guy run 15 yards downfield to get involved. It was mind-bendingly dumb.
Just to look at him angry, like you said, what are you going to do there? This isn't hockey. Right. You can't challenge the guy to a fight for a 5-minute, and then have everybody have one guy go to the box and then you keep playing like nothing happened. That's just not how it works. So listen, they did end up scoring on that drive, but I think it is indicative of the fact that they just aren't focused enough. And that's alarming to start the way they did, to have the penalties they did, the lapses. Execution wise is one thing, right? That's one kind of lapse, to not rally to the ball and tackle that 4-yard check down until the guys picked up 12. It's a different kind of lapse when you're picking up 15 yards because you can't help yourself from getting so angry as you are, as you're losing control of yourself, probably because of the way the game is going, because you're not playing well. And now you're getting angry at the other guys because they're having fun and they're probably saying things to you that you don't like. That's not how the Patriots typically do it. And I know there are people within the organization that are pretty confused and upset by the fact that it was such an uncharacteristic performance in that regard, with so much on the line, Tom. It's not week 2 or week 3.
You talking about yesterday or the week before?
I'm talking about this week. Last week should have been chalk it up as we learned our lesson. Right. Hey, that was our wake up call, right? You only get one. So, You're coming off the bye, you're coming off a long winning streak, you're playing a good team on the road, it's noisy, you have a young quarterback. Okay. I think a lot of us could look at that game last week and understand why it played out the way it did. And maybe they were due for a game like that. No excuse for the way it turned out yesterday. And so the discipline stuff you're talking about they're just little signs that this team's not where it needs to be mentally.
And that's why I say they're hitting a wall. They're flattening out. They're coming a little bit undone. Now you can tighten up the seams. You can get in there and start tightening those things and tighten them back up. And you have a good chance to do that against the Jaguars team that can clinch the #1 overall pick this week, which I would just bag this game if I was Jacksonville.
Oh,
Make sure you get the #1 overall pick. Don't be dicking around out there and ending up with #2. Just don't lose.
Though there's not one guy at the top of the draft this year. So
Be
it's
that
kind,
as
of
it
a, kind of
may.
a rough year for them in that regard.
Yeah. Well, let's skip over from the field of play into the sidelines. Kind of weird play calling that the Belleville Flash, our boss Kevin Miller, pointed out that I actually hadn't noticed because I think that some of the mistakes shaded over it. But after the game was tied at 7 and the Patriots had run 2 college plays to get into the end zone, adeptly run them with options. Their next 3 drives were 12 plays, 10 passes, really actually 11, because Max scrambled on one. And they only used about 2:45 of time on the drive. And it's weird that they went away from the run. And of course, it's always, it's predicated if you're 2nd and 10, sometimes you have to throw. But they came out in those drives throwing. So I'm not huge on the let's criticize Josh McDaniels for the play he sent in. You can execute it, but it was odd. Did you have an issue with any of the play calling there? Was it the Arrows or was it the Indians? That doesn't
So
work.
you're saying after the touchdown drive, the next drive for the Patriots was the interception drive. So they did throw 3 times.
Mhm.
And they were picked on the 3rd. Then the next drive after that, where it's still 10-7, it's anybody's game. It's the first half. They did, they ran it with Damian Harris for 1
Right.
yard. I think sometimes they do get away from it. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. They got the
second and 9 for
9.
anybody. 2nd and 9 for anybody is not a running down,
Right. That's what I'm
So,
saying.
Yeah. So I don't know. That did not stand out to me.
Didn't stand out to me either, but when you look at it on paper and you're like, shit, we got to 7 and 7 because we just ran a couple of really adept plays to get down there and put it in. It's worth noting, as is the 4th and 1 defensive call. Was that the Patriots' fault or was that just Josh Allening? Because I
You're
think
talking about the naked boot.
Yeah. I mean, the notion that, look, the guy, you'll be surprised. There was no hold on Jamie Collins, first of all, to dispel that notion. I mean, if there was any kind of a tug on him, he was trying to maintain connection with the defensive line, Jamie Collins was, and he was being sealed a little bit, but he was not being held. So when Josh Allen pivoted outside, the Bills left tackle let go of Collins. He began pursuit. J.C. Jackson came up from the secondary, didn't have a great angle, but he's also coming about 8 yards and needs to get there quick. He tried to submarine Allen. He failed. Collins failed. They ran into each other. But the interesting thing was that Dante Hightower was in the midst of the junk, which he should be as the inside linebacker on a 4th and 1 play. But it took him so long to get out there. It really highlighted one of the shortcomings of having Dante Hightower at this juncture, on the field. He's brilliant, incredibly strong, intuitive, can make plays, but he's slow. And by the time he got out there, he still wasn't in a position to make any kind of tackle, even though Josh Allen had gotten the first down by then. He just kind of whipped off him because he couldn't make the tackle. So
I thought that was a great
fault on the 4th and 1. Great call.
Great call by Dayball because you're forcing a cornerback, who's a very good cornerback, to tackle. And watch that play back. And you tell me if it was a good attempt on J.C. Jackson's end to make that tackle. I don't think that was a business decision necessarily, Tom, but that's a 5'10", sub 200-pound-ish corner trying to take down a 6'5", 235-pound quarterback by ducking his head and throwing a shoulder and praying
Yeah,
that it
thigh.
works.
But
It
that's any other option, though. I mean, he could.
I think you just stand straight up, put your face mask or try to into his belly or sternum, and just, you're not going to tackle him one-on-one. I'm not saying that he should have, knocked the guy down for a loss of 4, but at least slow him down so that Jamie Collins or Dante Hightower or somebody else can get over there and help you make the play. You can't swing and miss, swinging for the fences like that.
I think he still was going to end up like a welcome mat if he tried the other.
He would.
Hey, Jonathan,
but you slow him down. That's what I'm saying. You got to be willing to be the welcome mat sometimes if you're playing that position on 4th down, a big game.
Good point. The Patriots treated Josh Allen like they treat Mahomes, Rodgers. I don't know if they treat Lamar Jackson like this as well. Kind of the mush rush and make him process it. Probably did that with Lamar Jackson a bit, but should they have come off of that when they realized that Josh Allen was indeed finding people, and the longer you let him stand back there or move around, the worse it was getting for you? What else? My feeling, I have a sense, even though I've heard McCourty talk about adjustments and Belichick talk about some pass rush tweaking, you're just bailing against the tide at that point.
I think the reason you don't send more bodies at the problem is because of what happened on the 25-yard scramble by Josh Allen right up the gut, where they sent Juwan Bentley coming downhill hard, trying to create a little bit of pressure, but also opening up a huge lane for Josh Allen to run through right up the middle for an explosive play. He's lucky he didn't hurt himself at the end of that play. Not a great idea to try to jump and then land on your head when you're in the middle of a football game and you play quarterback. But I think that's why, because you start to blitz. All right, now there's even more open space. And Allen, to his credit, just watching some of those plays back, Tom, watching the game live and then looking at some of the numbers after in terms of all the time he had to throw, and he did have a ton of time. The Patriots obviously didn't get a sack in this game. He did a better job than I gave him credit for initially, for just subtly sidestepping pressure, floating away from pressure. There were plenty of opportunities for guys like Christian Barmore, Kyle Van Noy, Lawrence Guy had a hit in this game, others, to get him off his spot, and they did, but they just couldn't bother him enough. And he made some phenomenal throws. They were on the move technically, but he's really just floating away from pressure and throwing with touch and with great accuracy. So you have to credit him for that. I just think if you blitzed more, you were going to be opening yourself up to more explosive plays on the ground. Tom, I think the disappointing thing, if you're the Patriots today, is that guys like Matt Judon, Christian Barmore, Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower, that they didn't win more one-on-ones against an offensive line that is not good. That's not a good offensive line. And so for you to have 0 sacks, even as mobile as Josh Allen is, that's in some ways, that's the game, because Josh Allen had all kinds of time. He could throw down the field when he needed to, and you couldn't stop him. So while the coverage wasn't great throughout the course of the day, they weren't helped by what the Patriots had up front either. They should have been able to win more of those one-on-one battles, and they just did not show up hardly at all.
Yeah, it sounded like Bill Belichick was alluding to that a little bit this morning. And I'll tell you what, they didn't win. You pointed out plays on which Hunter Henry was open, but they don't generally win on the offensive side of the ball at the skill positions either. So I think this, again, highlighted a little bit what we talked about at the top of the program was that they're good players running a good scheme with good coaching, but they're going to need each other, and then they can't afford mistakes because they're not going to overwhelm teams with one guy just saying, oh shit, well, there goes Nelson Aguilar, just Nelson Aguilar, and it's just not going to happen.
Even Matt Judon's not really that guy. I mean, he's not Myles Garrett. He's not TJ Watt.
Guy.
You're not that guy, pal.
I thought he was that guy, but he was getting swallowed up. I wondered if some of it was the fact that he wasn't allowed to, as Chris Long described it a few weeks ago, run the hoop and just go upfield and try to rush back. This had to be a very disciplined rush that they employed against Mac Jones. He was not allowed. Judon was not. No one was allowed to just get some heat on this guy, however you have to do it, because the Patriots did not want him taken off like a drunken elk.
Sneaky, significant loss. Dietrich Wise yesterday.
Oh,
he's one of their better bull rushing defensive linemen. He's long, he's strong. He's more athletic than Godshaw or Guy. He's not as athletic as some of the other edge guys they have, but he's good in a game like this because he just wants to lock out and walk his guy back into the pocket. Thought you could have used him. He played over 40% of the snaps in Buffalo. I thought you could have used him yesterday against Josh Allen.
All right. Well, Patriots have some cleaning up to do. And the upshot of this pod, are they coming apart at the seams? Phil, this doesn't come down to a lack of talent, does it? This doesn't come down to a lack of coaching ability or scheme. This comes down to focus and execution. I mean, even if J.C. Jackson, for as poorly as the team played, comes down with the pick that he often makes, they're in a position to win the game and crush all of Western New York. Now, I'm not saying that that should decorate or alter anybody's view of this game, because I think some people go, yeah, they were a J.C. Jackson dropped interception away from maybe going in and winning this thing. Don't kid yourself. They got manhandled.
Yeah.
They got handled. And that's part of it in a high leverage game for a player to make that pick. Phil, what were you going to say?
They got dominated, but I think a significant percentage of the domination was due to self-inflicted wounds.
But not the same as Indy.
Indy, I would put the percentage. It's always a sliding scale, right? Indy, I would have put the sliding scale at 80% self-inflicted wounds and 20% Colts domination, because they really dominated you that one drive. And then at the very
Josh
end,
Allen was playing for the Colts last week.
oof.
It might have been like 41 to 10 or 13. And if Carson Wentz was playing for the Bills, Patriots would have won.
I think, to answer your question, are they falling apart at the seams? I don't think so, because I think the things that bothered them and that didn't make this game closer than it should have been are easily correctable.
We've been saying, here's the thing, and I was hoping you would say that. We said that after the Miami game to open the season. We said it after the Saints game when they had defensive lapses and personnel stuff. They've made so many preventable mistakes, whether it's fumbles, penalties, personnel. They've just been, and again, maybe it's because they're early in their cycle, their evolutionary cycle, first year of the program for a lot of these guys, and they've overachieved relative to what the national expectations were. Maybe they're not with the program yet in some ways.
Well, but didn't it feel like if you're looking at this season as a game,
it did.
Felt like the first quarter of this season was loaded with mental lapses. And then the second and third quarters, they were pretty clean. And now we've seen 2 weeks where they haven't been. Are they that team, or are they the team that we saw for 2 months? I guess I'm still believing that they are the team we saw in the middle portion of the year, but it's TBD. If they lose to Jacksonville, or Miami, then we'll look back at the season and say they're the team that we saw at the very beginning of the year.
I think they are that team against those opponents. I think these opponents who are going to stress them and bring a level of urgency are highlighting some of the shortcomings the Patriots have. Not only are these teams as talented, or in some cases more talented than the Patriots. I mean, the Colts had a bunch of friggin' linemen out too. They're missing them to the center. Not only are they as talented or more talented, they're playing with a greater level of desperation than the Patriots are. And that's a bad combination.
How does that happen? That's my question. And that it ties into the focus thing we're talking about, the discipline stuff that we're talking about.
That 2-4 mentality that Kyle Van Noy talked about a bunch of times, that infiltrated. 2-4 mentality is out the window now. The 2-14 mentality right now.
It shouldn't be. I mean, you got all the motivation you need out there. There are plenty of people that don't believe in you, that don't believe in your quarterback, that think you beat up on a bunch of bad teams in the middle of the year, and you're just going to coast because you're the Patriots and you think this is how it's supposed to go. That's a bad sign, and that might be the kind of thing that you can't really recover from midseason. I'm not sure
maybe there was too much victory lapping after that Bills win.
They were very happy after that Bills win.
I mean, we
all thought they should have been.
Yeah, and the media doesn't really impact it, but we certainly engaged in the propaganda of it. All right, we're gonna put a bow on this one. Next Pats comes up tonight. Excuse me, no, not next Pats. That'll be later in the week.
The breakdown,
the game plan, the breakdown, the next Pats, the Patriots talk.
Breakdown.
Love you, Phil.
Breakdown.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.